What's up guys, and welcome back to the Diablo 3 how-to guide. In this video I'm going to go over how I complete builds for a season and then also improving the damage of that build over the course of an entire season. Whenever a season starts, what you should do is use challenge rifts as a way to kind of jump start or get a head start on materials, especially bounty materials. So like right now at the time of this recording, the season 13 will start on February the 23rd. Now, a new challenge rift will actually come out on Monday, the Monday that comes before the launch of that season. What I am going to do is I'm going to wait till Saturday after the season starts to do the challenge rift, and then I will redeem that reward on my new rebirth character. This will give me bounty mats and a lot of other stuff like death breaths to kind of get started, because for the most part you're going to be doing bounties anyway, but having that stuff extra at the beginning will help. Going over the journey. Now, if your build that you're looking at putting together for a season, if you get that set from completing chapter 4, well, then you actually got a leg up. But if you have to go and get the entirely different set than what is gifted to you, then you're going to be spending a little bit more time at the beginning. But generally, what I do is whenever I'm looking at putting together a build, I will focus on one slot at a time. So for the sake of this, let's say that I got all 6 of my pieces from the journey. So with this build, this is the Shadow Mantle Impale build. I will need to focus on getting, my amulet and my rings, and then my bracers, offhand, all that stuff. So what I'll do is I'll alternate between running normal Nephilim rifts and greater rifts and then bounties, because I'm gonna need a lot of mats as I go through this season. So by doing that, I'm gonna focus on using blood shards to prioritize one slot at a time, and then also hopefully get rift drops to drop what I need. So for instance, if I'm going to start focusing on the amulet and the ring, then what I'm going to do is all the blood shards that I earn at the beginning, I'm going to buy just only that. I usually don't start with jewelry because it's expensive. You kind of get more bang for your buck if you're going for other pieces like armor pieces and even weapons, but it's kind of up to you on what you need and what you're putting together. I try to save all my death breaths for enchanting and rather than actually upgrading rare items, because it's actually pretty expensive at the beginning of a season to upgrade a rare item. I mean, you're looking at 25 death breaths here, and until you actually start, farming, torment 12 or 13, you're not gonna get that much death breaths by doing a whole lot at the beginning. You're gonna want to run all your bounties so you can get all your crafting mats and all your bounty materials, because you're gonna be extracting legendary powers. You might switch up builds mid-season, so you want to try to get as many of the legendary powers as you can at the beginning. And with that being said, while you're leveling, go ahead and get the Kanai's cube and all that stuff. And for the most part, as far as journey goes, you can pretty much get all of the chapters done when you hit 70. Alright, so now we're going to move on to legendary gems. You should always prioritize the gems that are going to be used in the build you're trying to put together. Once you actually get them to drop, then every time you can get, I would say, at least a 60% success chance on any of those gems, you should prioritize it. Once you actually plateau on a greater rift difficulty, before you actually can move up, start leveling other gems as well, even at the beginning, because we're going to need to use these gems to augment later on down the road. With that being said, I also, when I get enough gold and I'm able to run vault with hoarder and actually stockpile a lot of gold, I'll run empowered greater rifts, especially when my build is getting really close to being farmable efficient, so I don't die that much. And you can actually net 5 upgrade attempts per successful completion. Once you actually get to a point where you're plateauing on your greater rift difficulty, I would definitely try to level as many gems as possible to around the same level before you start moving up. So let's say you get all of your gems to around 40 or so, and then you get your build to the point where you can now farm GR60 or GR68 or something like that. Once you prioritize the leveling of your build gems, then you can start going down the list and getting all those done as well. Because when we start augmenting, which is going to be much later in the season, we want our gems to be around 60, 70, or even 80. So what I do is whenever I run bounties, I will go ahead and I will actually kill the key wardens while I'm doing it. That way I can stockpile infernal machines and I can kill the Ubers and everything, and just kind of get mats together that needed for the Hellfire Amulet. Because unlike this build, some builds that require the Hellfire Amulet for the 5th passive, all you need to do is just craft these until you get good rolls and you get one of the 5 passives. So for instance, if I was going to use Hellfire Amulet here, and let's say that I wanted to use awareness, right? And a lot of Demon Hunter builds will use this. What I need to look for on my Hellfire is any Hellfire amulet that has good rolls, that has either numbing traps, leech, cold a weak, ambush, or awareness, right? It doesn't have to be a certain passive. It just has to be one of the 5 that I'm looking for. All right, let's go on to enchanting gear. When you start actually getting the pieces you need for your build, they're going to be crap. They're not going to be necessarily ancient. They're definitely not going to be primal at the beginning of a season. So what you need to do is you need to start shifting all of the stats on your gear to complement the build you're putting together, right? So what I end up doing is whenever I start actually looking at stats and enchanting, I will remove any unuseful stats from my gear, which is, you know, let's say on this one it's like impale damage on my feet, right? But I'm using impale, but this could be any other skill in the game. So if that stat is not actually helping what I'm running as far as my build goes, I'm going to remove it, and those are going to go priority first. I also don't focus on maxing out rolls at the beginning. All I'm trying to do is get the right stat on the gear I'm trying to do, because we're not going to have that many materials at the beginning. So try not to waste a whole lot at the beginning, because you have to cover all of your slots and getting it all optimized as well. You want to make sure you balance your crit chance and your crit damage. Usually what I do is I try to get, you know, all my crit pieces usually ends up being on my rings, and then on my amulet, and then the gloves are a big one. I try to get, you know, double crit on there, and then you can also get crit on your bracers and all in your helm as well. So you really want to kind of even it out. You want to try to get a, you know, as balanced as possible between crit chance and crit damage, just because of the way the multipliers work. Because the crit as a multiplier, what it does is it takes your crit chance and your crit damage as an average before it multiplies it across any other multiplier. So having those numbers as even as possible is probably going to help you in the long run. Another important thing to do when you're enchanting is making sure that you're getting your elemental damage on either your bracers or on your amulet. You can also get it on your offhand, like quivers, shields, and stuff like that. But usually, if your gear allows it, you definitely want to try to get it at least on your bracers. As you can see here, I have lightning damage 20% here, which is a max roll. But you definitely need that, because that's going to be a multiplier as well. You also want to allot at least 2 slots for skill damage. And certain slots will be allowed for certain primaries or generators or spenders. So for this build in general, I have my skills on, I have impale on my helm, and I have impale on my boots. But you can also get skill damage on chest pieces and shoulder pieces, as well as belts sometimes, and then also pants. Now, as far as sockets go, whenever you start putting your build together, you need to have sockets on your jewelry in order to use your legendary gems. It is preferred that you try to get rings that have, and rings and amulets that have a socket already, so you don't have to waste an enchant roll on it. So, but at the beginning, what you need to do is just roll any unuseful stat off of that gear to make it into a socket. Like here, this compass rose is actually a problem piece for this build currently. I need an ancient that has, you know, already a socket on it that allows me to get like crit, dex, crit or something on here, but it's also a piece I'm working on. But the idea is at the beginning, make sure you got your sockets so you can actually use your gems, because a lot of builds in Diablo require these gems and these abilities to function. As far as your weapon goes, whenever you actually get the weapon you need for your build, if it doesn't have a socket and you don't have a gift to put a socket on it, then what I would do is I'd go ahead and roll off the least useful stat, which is usually like vitality, into a socket, right? So once you actually do get a gift, roll that socket back off into a new more useful stat, and then, you know, use the gift to add the socket to it as well. Generally speaking, I try to not use a gift really early in the season until I get maybe like an ancient or a really good weapon that has good rolls, because it really depends on, you know, RNG if you know, are managed to drop a bunch of gifts. Because if you do get an upgrade, and it's happened to me before in the past, where I'll, you know, use a gift on an item and then I'll immediately get a better weapon, and then I'm waiting around to get a gift for, you know, several days. So you just have to like play around with, like, you know, what gear you have and how good your luck is. But I would try to, at the beginning, just go ahead and enchant a socket on and just really look for that GG weapon to use that gift on. Alright, now moving on to the next phase of gearing, right? You have all the pieces of your gear. Now we just need to improve your DPS. What you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up looking for ancient variants of all your gear. Ancients are going to roll higher on the main stat and on your vitality, and also, which is also going to increase your DPS overall. What I usually end up doing whenever I'm gearing is I'll save duplicate pieces. So you see all the pieces I have on my Demon Hunter here. I'll have, you know, a whole separate Carly's point, or I'll have, you know, another set of my shadow gear. And what I'm doing with those extra pieces, those duplicates, is I'm going to use those in reforging. And the reason I do that is because whenever that's why you're going to be running bounties a lot. So that's when you're going to do is you're going to be using Reforged to look for ancients or primals or whatever the case may be to get those higher stats. And with having that extra gear piece, instead of disrupting what you're farming with, you have a whole build basically in gear in your stash that you can just manipulate in the queue to really kind of fish for a really good piece. As you start going further into the season, your Paragon's going to get much higher. And usually my goal in every season is to get to at least 800 Paragon, because that allows me to actually fill up all of these tabs here. And I don't have to worry so much about, Paragon priority. Once you actually get to over 800 Paragon, you can start dumping into main stat here as well. Now, some builds are going to require you to do like an even split on vitality and your main stat, but depending on what you're putting together and how your build feels as far as survivability and damage, you can make that call on whether or not you need to put it into your main stat or vitality in Paragon. Now, this is kind of a personal preference for me and kind of what I've noticed, but as you can see right here, this build is my Season 10 Shadow Mantle build, right? This was clearing up, 85, 87 GR level. And as you can see here, I have 17,000 dexterity. And that's because a lot of my gear is ancient and a lot of my gear actually has been augmented. And I have 1,100 Paragon, and all of my extra Paragon points is put into dexterity. Anything that you stack in Diablo is going to have diminishing returns, including your main stat. So the way it works is if I'm sitting at, let's say, 5,000 dexterity between all of my gear and Paragon and all that, and then I add 50 dexterity, that 50 dexterity is going to be worth more than if I tried to add 50 right now because I'm so high. So think about it, when you're analyzing gear and you're considering rolls and stuff like that, you can, on a couple of pieces, roll off main stat for other useful stats. Now at this level, when you're starting to like really put on a lot of ancients and you're starting to get a lot of good rolls, this is when I would start actually augmenting, right? But I would only augment ancients that have good rolls. So like for these gloves right here, I rolled all resist on here. You got dex, you got crit, right? So I opted to go ahead and augment this piece of gear at a gem rank of level 70. So what I usually do is, and on the augments, let's go over here to the augments real quick. So for just non-jewelry, non-weapons, you're looking at level 50. Whenever you were actually farming and doing all your J-grade rifts and you're leveling all those legendary gems evenly, this is where it comes into play. Once you start getting, decent rolls and ancients on several pieces of gear, go ahead and augment it at the base level, at least level 50 gems, and just worry about that for now. And same thing goes with the rings and the weapon and all that stuff. But I would only augment ancients that, like I said, have been enchanted and well balanced with the rest of your gear, so that that extra main stat is going to be an actual plus for you. Now that kind of leads into the next part, which is kind of the next section of like enchanting gear. You're going to be starting to get a lot of ancients and stuff. You're going to be hunting for those good rolls that your build needs. So what we will do now is we will go to the enchanters, and now that we're enchanting these new pieces, these new better pieces, we're going to start going for max rolls, right? So let's see what do we have on max rolls here, like this one here. So what I did was, whenever I got this piece of gear, which has dex, bit, impale, and I was just going to go ahead and just keep enchanting this until I got that 15%. So how it works, to check on min-max on any stat on any of your gear, roll over a piece of gear and hold down control, and it will show you the range numbers for each one of the stats on that gear. So as you can see here on my chest piece, we got 643 out of 650, which is pretty good. And so at this stage, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be trying to max out all of your stat rolls that you've enchanted with the Mystic. So another thing you're going to want to do is start balancing out all your multipliers, because this is what's going to really improve your DPS late game. And what you need to do is understand the difference between sheet DPS, which is what you see on your actual character sheet here, and then effective DPS. So whenever I actually go into a rift with this build, I'm going to be doing a lot more than 2.2 million damage, right? And the reason is because a lot of my DPS is calculated on skills, and a lot of the things like, impale damage 15%, that's not going to be reflected on my sheet damage. And by spreading out all your multipliers, it's going to allow you to do more effective DPS. So when you get higher in your build and you're getting more, and you're trying to improve your damage, don't look at this number when you start, throwing stats around, right? Make a few changes, go run a rift, see how it feels, and, really analyze it from a effective DPS standpoint rather than a sheet DPS standpoint. This build, the only thing this build could use is probably the bonus damage against elites, because that is a multiplier. And as far as balancing everything else out, you're looking at like dex, attack speed, and lightning damage and skill damage and elemental damage, all that stuff kind of plays a part. And whenever you're looking at your build as a whole, depending on what your stat priorities are, so let's say you look up a build online, they want you to have crit chance, crit damage, cooldown reduction, let's say lightning, elemental damage on your bracers. When you look at all those stats, try to make all those even as possible. Try to spread them out as much as you can across all of your pieces of gear, because when the game does the math and it starts multiplying all those multipliers against each other, you're going to yield a higher DPS number than if you just stacked it all into one. All right, now we're getting to more of the advanced stuff. We're getting really late in the gearing process, and this is going to be when you're really trying to just upgrade the augment levels on your gems, start looking for primals to replace your ancients. And what you need to do here is all of your games that you should be playing, all the risks that you're running, everything should be done in 4-player groups, because you get a higher Paragon and experience, more magic find and all that stuff, and it's quicker as well. I'm gonna go over something really important when it comes to augmenting. At the beginning, when you start augmenting gear, you're gonna just go for the base amount, right? Because any amount is better than nothing, right? Once you start actually getting ready to upgrade the augment level on your gear, I wouldn't go like this piece of gear, my gloves. I'm not gonna go and level a gem to like 75 or like 74 and then go and augment it again, because it takes a lot of mats, It takes time to level that gem to 70 plus. It takes all these gems and stuff to use. And yeah, it's only 3 at the moment, but when you look at like Flawless Royal Emerald times 3 for every piece of gear you have, it does add up. What you should be focusing on is at the beginning, get all of your gear augmented at the base level gem, right? And then just keep upgrading gems. And I would say that between every like 10 and 15 levels on that gem, upgrade that piece of gear. So if I was going to look to upgrade the augment on these gloves, I would actually not even consider it unless I was holding a level 80 or 85 gem, because it's going to give me more bang for my buck as far as the mats that's going to be required. And like I said before, when you get to this level, you're going to be doing like GR70, GR80. You're going to be going through a lot of pieces of gear. You're going to be looking for primals with good rolls. And another thing to note too is whenever you're rolling or enchanting primals, they'll always have max rolls regardless. Another thing you might want to do when you start getting much higher in Paragon level and everything, depending on what build you're using, you might want to start shifting some of this Paragon out of your main stat into Vitality, and it all goes back to diminishing returns here. So like on this build here, I could probably drop back down to like 15,000 Dexterity and get a little bit more health. But your hands are going to be kind of tied when you get to that point, because some of the pieces of gear that you have are going to be tied to that slot. So for instance, let's look at this shoulder piece, which I haven't rolled at all because it has Dex, Vit, All Resist, Cooldown Reduction, right? Pretty good for a Demon Hunter Shadow Mantle build. But let's say that like for these gloves here, like I replaced like the one slot that had probably Vitality on it or something, so I only have certain options for re-rolling. So this item, if I wanted to roll off Dexterity, is not going to be eligible unless I reforge it and reset it. That's why you're going to be looking for gear pieces that already has all the stats you want on it, so you only have to make minor adjustments. So like these shoulder pieces, these would be my first candidate to roll off Dexterity, right? And so what am I going to be looking for? Other beneficial stats, right? You can go for regeneration or armor or life, but there's not really a whole lot of like options here for me. So another thing you should pay attention to whenever you're enchanting is to make sure you look here at whatever slot you're looking at to replace, and make sure that something in here falls within a beneficial stat for your build. And as far as that gets you pretty far into the progression of gear. Past this, you're going to be looking at replacing a lot of pieces with really good primals, and then making sure those primals actually have the rolls required, and then augmenting those. And then at the very, very, very end, like the highest end of your gearing, you might be like just straight upgrading augments at that point. Usually no one gets really that far in a season, and unless you're doing non-season stuff, which a lot of people do, I do as well, you're not going to get to the point in a season where you're going to have all primals and it's all going to be good rolls and it's all augmented to like 100 plus, but it's a good goal to strive for. But just as kind of a closing thought here, whenever you have put together your build and let's say you've plateaued at like 55 or like GR60, you need to look at all of your gear, not only individually, but as a whole, and to figure out where your bottleneck is, right? You always need to keep in mind, what your build is trying to accomplish with the skills and the, stat priorities you're looking for, and making sure everything's nicely balanced out. Going back to like the multipliers and all this stuff, spread it all out. And, you know, I've even been in situations where, like this build, I think I was stuck at like, you know, GR 89 or something on my push, but I ran out of time in the season. But if I would have put it like, let's say, bonus damage to elites on here, right? That's a multiplier which would have actually increased my DPS, my effective DPS, quite a bit. So it's all about just looking at the big picture and just kind of like tweaking it here and there. I hope this video actually helped you guys. I look forward to seeing the comments in the comment section if this has helped you, or, you know, if you've been able to break a plateau in either your non-season or, you know, in whatever season's coming up. If you like Diablo content, if you like Blizzard content in general, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button to see more, and I will see you guys next time.